special friends, good to be with you. So I thought I would make a video addressing some of the questions that have come in so far. If you have more, just submit them to my blog until I get the chat room up there. I'm adding things slowly so I don't get overwhelmed. Caro asks, and I hope I am pronouncing that correctly. I'm not sure. Maybe you can send me a note if I'm really off. How Chiron aspects affect synastry, how that shows up in chart comparison. And I will be doing a series on that. I'll be actually putting out quite a bit of series this summer. So, and I'm still working on it, weekly. But this summer, things should start rolling in a little bit more regularly. I'll probably be doing that one this summer. But the short answer is that they provide either a healing or a wounding, depending on the aspect between the two people, and they're usually a double-edged effect, where we will get a little bit of both. Like Chiron to the sun, a healing or the wounding of the other person's ego or identity or vitality, sometimes their will. If it's Venus, it's going to be their sensitivities or their self-esteem or their love nature there, the sensuality nature, depending on what planet it is. That's going to, and the aspect, it's going to determine whether it's going to be a healing or a hurting, and it's going to be a mix, but sometimes you can look at it and see both. Now, something super easy, like a trine or a sextile, that's going to be a no-brainer when it comes to things pretty much functioning as just a harmonious flow. But aspects are always going to determine the flavor of the relationship between the planets. Barbara wanted to know about orb allowance and applying and separating aspects. So I think those are separate questions that you were framing there. So separating and applying aspects. When an aspect is applying, that is when the faster moving planet is moving towards the slower moving planet. So that is when it is applying. Fast moving planet coming in conjuncts to the slower moving planet. Then we have the conjunction, and then we have the separating aspect as the faster moving planet moves on. Applying aspects are when the climax is building. So they're known as being more potent or having more weight and or being stronger. So if you have like an applying aspect that's exact, that's going to be one of the overriding factors in a chart, because the closest aspects in our chart are always the ones that speak the loudest, regardless of what they are. Separating aspects, no kitty, stop playing with my cord. Separating aspects are considered less potent or less serious, because the action is starting to leave off. So it's like we're going to the party when we're applying, we're at the party, and then we're starting to feel like, I think I'm getting tired of this, it's time to leave the party. So that kind of feeling that, build, I'm excited, I'm here, time to go, kind of deal. So, orb allowance. I will do a specific video on this, but I'll give you the short answer here. I need to do a specific video because it is kind of a more involved topic, but generally when it comes to the sun and the moon, if it's in the same sign in the same house, we allow up to 10 degrees for a conjunction. Oppositions can be fairly wide as well, up to like 7 degrees or so we would consider an opposition. Sextiles and trines, 5-6 degrees. Quintiles and the minor aspects like septiles, naviles, vigentiles, anything that is considered a minor aspect, that's only going to be within 1 to 1.5 degrees max. And most of the time when it's like the seriously minor aspects, the aspects that make up the deciles, the quintiles, the septiles, naviles, then they're usually just going to be 1 degree of orb allowance, and the closer the better when it comes to that business. Asteroids are a little bit different, and it actually depends on the asteroid itself. The asteroids that we have a more mainstream understanding of or connection to. Like Chiron, they tend to have a larger orb, like even up to 7 degrees, we could see. Most astrologers are going to keep that, all asteroid connections, all conjunctions, or all aspects to asteroids are going to keep that under 2 degrees. As I practice more and more and see more and more charts, 'cause I see hundreds of charts per month, as I practice more and more, I see that that really tight orb allowance is not really necessary a lot of the time. That it can be up to 5 degrees even, sometimes even 6 degrees, depending on the asteroid, and we still have an association with it. But again, any aspect, the closer it is, the louder it's going to be, the more of an effect and an influence it's going to have in the chart. Even if that's a seriously minor aspect, that's going to be something that is an overriding force in the personality. And I have a post on this, an article I wrote, specifically on orb allowance, that goes through all of the different aspects and gives my opinion on what that is. So I will attach that to your question on my blog. And if that's not already on my website as an article, I think it is, but if it's not, it should be. So I'll find that. I don't update as regularly as I should, but again, I'm going to start having more time. Sophie has a question about a Neptune-Saturn square, and if that has anything to do with carrying around some kind of ancestral guilt or difficulty that they are then charged themselves, the person with this aspect, to deal with. And this is based on the teachings of a German astrologer that you were following. I have no knowledge of that myself. I don't see that there are any aspects that doom us personally to one thing or another. Aspects are a map of our internal belief system that then externalizes to become the experiences that we see in the world. So if we want to change something that we're seeing or that we're dealing with, it's up to us to do the internal work necessary to do that. There's nothing that we need to do externally. There's nothing that that is being pressed upon us, that we can be cursed with, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to astrology. We have, and the story that, or the teaching, it looks like, that you've learned from this astrologer sounds very much like a twin flame kind of story, where you had mentioned that the two are now coming together to work out some kind of past life thing, and they have to do that, and if they don't, then there's some kind of consequence to that. And I don't subscribe to those kinds of beliefs, because I don't personally see evidence of that in the actual world. And those kinds of teachings are a real racket, money racket, when it comes to astrologers and psychics, because it stirs people up. It really gets people fearful. And if you can catch people in that fearful state, you can make a lot of money. It's something that I don't personally subscribe to. Ideas that we have to come together or work something out, because if we don't, there's some kind of consequence, or that the universe has, predetermined that we are going to go through this particular crisis with this particular person, and, we have to now go through that because it's some kind of destiny. It's not, it's just not, those types of teachings or types of stories aren't something that I actually see play out, but they are really interesting hooks to get people to start to follow you or believe you. Now, when we're talking about past life or karma stuff, that's impossible to prove. That's always going to come down to the personal ideas or opinions or inclinations or intuitions of the astrologer or the psychic that's teaching that. It's something where you're going to have to place an enormous amount of faith in one person in order to follow that kind of teaching. So I'm more of a therapist, coach, counselor type of astrologer rather than a more business-minded kind of astrologer. So I have a different approach when it comes to astrology, and I have a different idea about what astrology is. Astrology is not mystical. There's nothing mystical about astrology. It's not mysterious at all. Astrology is simply a map of our internal belief system. That's it. And how does the world show up as a result or a consequence of what you think about yourself or what you believe about yourself? What is your idea of your identity? What are the beliefs that have formed as a result of the aspects in your chart? Like when I meet with a client, I listen to what they're interested in hearing about, or I listen to what kind of themes or issues that they're dealing with in their life right then, and I can look at the chart and I can pick it out immediately when it comes to where that is coming from, or a certain struggle or any kind of belief. You can look at it in the chart and say, okay, that's where that is, and this is where it comes from. And when we can see that, then we can make it conscious. Then we can see beyond it, because we can see that, well, if that is a belief that is then turning into what I'm seeing in my reality, then I have some control over this. And we do have enormous amounts of control over our charts, but largely that's going to come from the understanding of what it is to be able to give up control, to be able to get authentic, real control. I don't subscribe to more fatalistic ideas about how astrology works, or that, doomed to one thing or another, because we're not. We have every opportunity to access happiness, or to be able to leave our guilt or our shame behind, and there aren't any outside influences that are going to be able to make that happen. It's something that I think in this respect, I probably am not in agreement with what that astrologer has going on there. But he probably has some other wonderful things. A question about planets and houses and explaining those. I will be doing a series of that over on my teaching series. I will be adding a ton to my teaching series this year. It's a little light right now, but be patient with me. I'll be doing all of those over there, because that's part of the structure of the building when it comes to our knowledge, is understanding the houses, how astrology works, why it works, the individual archetypes, the planets, the aspects, all of that. I'll be pulling that all together. Lilith. I'll also be doing a series on Lilith, probably sooner than later, because that's a topic that seems to be a hot topic that a lot of people are really wondering about. It's an archetype that's starting to emerge more and seep more and more into the mainstream consciousness of humans. So we'll be allowing for a bigger orb when it comes to Lilith here going into the future, because it's becoming something that is more known, or more in the mainstream. And Jonathan was wondering about if you use your place of birth or your time of birth to calculate your chart. And you're going to need both. You will need the time to know the ascendant. If you don't have a time, then you can still see the signs and the aspects, and that will give you a lot of information about a person. But if you do have that birth time, especially if it's exact, then that's going to give you all that there is to see. That will show you what the ascendant is and give you the placement of the cusps of the 12 houses. So depending on what house system you decide to use, that's going to change where the houses start and end, but it is not going to change where the ascendant starts. Now, if you go with whole signs, the ascendant is still going to start in whatever degree in that sign that it's in, but that sign will start at the beginning degree of that whole sign. So this will be explained more and more as I do more and more teaching videos. I will be doing full chart interpretations and really showing probably next week. I'm a little lightly scheduled next week. So next week I'll probably do a video of how to find and read aspects, because they are so important when it comes to, well, being happy or finding a place of wholeness or satisfaction in the world, because our aspects are simply our psychological complexes. That's it. And if you can figure out what that is, and those complexes are coming from certain beliefs that we hold or certain ideas about ourselves that we hold or that we hold about the world, and worldviews are self-views. So if you can address those self-views, then that is automatically going to translate to seeing something different in three-dimensional reality. So we'll be getting more and more into that, and how to determine what that belief is that happens when we see an aspect, and how to see beyond that, and then how to get the good stuff out of that aspect, because that's what they're for. Easy aspects are there, kind of a given, and sometimes we have to push through those too, because those can make us more lazy or really, with it. Our hard aspects are what drive the story forward in our lives. It's what causes things to happen. So we want to, and it's very much like a narrative, a birth chart. It's very much like a story. You know, there's always a crisis that's involved in a story. There's something's at stake in a good story. And when that is solved, then you come to the end of that and you find, kind of the moral of what that crisis or what was at stake was. And so that's very much how our hard aspects end up, is we find the moral of the story. And we still retain that characteristic that hard aspect is showing, but it's not a characteristic that is counter to our progress or our happiness. So I'll be getting to all of those things, and I've cut my schedule down to 3 days a week with clients. And as I get more and more subscribers to my website, I'll be able to start meeting with clients a little bit less and less, and start moving over so I'm able to provide more information, more content for a larger group of people. Also have a little bit of a break from meeting with clients so much, because that can be a lot of wear and tear. So it'll work out for both of us. I will be back next week with more subscriber questions, so keep them coming. We should be able to connect every week. And I will be back with you guys next week. Bye.